From the outside, looking in, the Watts family seemed like a perfect all-American family. Christopher Watt, the father, and Shanann Watt, the mother, both were natives of North Carolina. Like many modern-day couples, the two met on Facebook. According to Shanann, he sent me a friend request, and one thing led to another. And he's the best thing that ever happened to me.
And I got a friend request from Chris. I was in a really, really, really bad place, and I got a friend request from Chris on Facebook, and I was like, oh, what the heck, I'm never gonna meet him. Except, well, one thing led to another, and 8 years later, we have 2 kids, we live in Colorado, and he's the best thing that has ever happened to me. And because of my health challenges, because I got so sick, I let him in. And he only knew me at that time. He knew me at my worst, and he accepted me.
2 years after meeting, the two got married. Shanann's parents adored Chris and thought he was a perfect match for their daughter. He did everything he could for her to make her happy and comfortable, Shanann's mother, Sandra, said. Shanann was often uncomfortable as she suffered from lupus, an autoimmune disorder characterized by joint pain, swelling, fatigue, and skin rashes. Despite this ailment, Shanann was described by many as a hard worker. She was an independent representative for Lavelle, an MLM company that sold Thrive, a vitamin product. Chris worked as an operator for Anadarko Petroleum, a large oil company. The year after getting married, the couple moved to Frederick, Colorado, a small town in the northern part of the state. There, they made the down payment for a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house in a local suburb on 2825 Saratoga Trail. Soon after moving into their house, they had their first child, a baby they named Bella Marie Watts. Nearly 2 years later, in July of 2015, they had their second child, another girl. Her name was Celeste Watts, but she was often referred to as Cece. Chris and Shanann were described as excellent parents who would do anything for their 2 little girls. In June of 2018, it was revealed that Shanann was pregnant again, and this time it was a boy. Something that overjoyed Chris, as he had always longed for a son. They named him Nico Lee Watts, and Shanann was expected to give birth to him in January of 2019. Shanann was an avid social media user and loved to document her family life and thoughts via Facebook and Instagram. Those who followed her said it appeared the family seemed to be the happiest people in the world and were full of zest for life. However, the once happy family's life would be torn apart in August 2018. On August the 9th, Shanann had a business trip that required her to travel to Scottsdale, Arizona. She arrived back at 1:45 a.m. on the morning of August the 13th and got a ride to her home from a friend and co-worker, Nicole Atkinson, since Chris was at home taking care of the kids. The family's doorbell camera caught Shanann being dropped off and arriving back home. That would be the last time she was ever seen again. Later that day, at 1:40 p.m., while Chris was at work, Frederick police officer Scott Conrad was dispatched to the family home for a reported welfare check. Nicole Atkinson was concerned about Shanann as she had not responded to any of her texts or calls since earlier that morning when she dropped her off. This was very out of character, and additionally, Shanann had also missed an OB/GYN appointment and a work meeting she was supposed to have that day. Nicole also told Officer Conrad that she went to the Watts home at around 12 p.m. and knocked the door and rang the doorbell but got no response. Officer Conrad walked around the outside of the house but didn't see anything suspicious or out of place, although he did notice Shanann's car was still at home. Chris soon arrived back home after Conrad called him and advised that Shanann and the kids were missing. Although nothing seemed amiss, Chris acted a bit odd when he arrived at the house. For starters, Chris greeted Conrad and then went inside the house via the garage and told him he would let him in, Conrad and the Atkins, into the house. He then spent several minutes doing something in the house before finally allowing the trio to enter. Nicole was unnerved that Chris seemed very relaxed about the whole situation despite the gravity of it. Chris gave Officer Conrad permission to search the house, which was found to be unoccupied. Conrad also noticed that Chris seemed not very engaged in the search and was busy doing something on his phone. Searchers later discovered that Shanann's shoes, purse, phone, wedding ring and keys were still in the house, along with the children's car seats. Officer Conrad asked Chris when was the last time he saw Shanann, and he responded that he last saw her at 5 a.m. when he was getting ready for work. He mentioned she said something about going to a friend's house with the two kids later that day. When it became apparent that they weren't in the house, Conrad called for backup to assist with the search. One of the responding officers, Detective Bonhoeffer, noticed that the bed in the master bedroom was missing its top sheet. The Watts neighbours, Nathan, talked with detectives and revealed he had had a home surveillance camera that captured part of the driveway of the Watts house. When police reviewed the footage, it showed Nicole dropping Shanann off. Nothing was seen for the next few hours, but then at 5 a.m, Chris's truck is seen backing up into the driveway before later leaving in the direction of his workplace. Chris told police that he had started backing his truck up into the garage to load up his tools for the week since he had had them stolen in the past. However, Nicole and Nathan both stated they never saw Chris back his truck into the driveway. Chris was at Nathan's house when he showed the footage to Officer Conrad. Many would remark that Chris looked visibly scared. Later that evening, police officially declared Shanann and her kids as missing and put out a brawler for them.
What's that?
You just have my camera. Lay down.
Most of my stuff from my coolers, my water jugs, my book bag, my computers, some of the tools that I had from the toolbox. I knew I was going to have to do some pumping unit rubbers today. So I was out so far.
Is this on continually
Yep.
recording?
Yep. Well,
It's not, is it
any
motion or is it,
event,
okay, so it's motion.
any motion event that happens, but I get cars driving from this street, from this street. This is him at 517.
I usually park out there on the side and get everything back in. Be easier to lug everything out there, all the tools that I had to bring in. What else can I do with this?
detective just showed up, so he'll probably want to talk to you. He probably, like I said, he might have you call at the bank and see if there's any kind of activity.
Because if there was any sort of action out
Out of
there,
his cameras,
I would have got it.
like
Right.
we had issues the other week when people were stealing stuff out of like garages and stuff like that. And I have parked my truck
I had
up
your
here.
mark right here.
Yeah. So someone,
See if
I can
anything
see where
happened.
someone tried to jimmy with a flathead screwdriver over there. And it was just like,
But if any action would have happened, any cars or anything left your house, I would
yeah,
have
they
known.
would have been like right in that area. They should have fixed me.
Oh, it'll pick up anything coming down the street this way.
You know where that turn is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Watch, I'll show you. There's nothing on here. We've already watched that one. But like, you'll see this car.
The security system you have.
Oh, you can see this car starting to drive down the street.
Right one.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? They picked up all the way down there.
He's next door.
Can we go?
I was talking about dispatcher. That'd be close for.
But yeah, we can pick up cars coming this way. I get anything coming this way and making this turn. So, and usually at night I pick up the cars pulling the ear trim. So, unless they pulled right here,
Yeah.
but I would have caught her walking out. Diesel.
You're good.
But yeah, I thought nothing.
Nothing for the rest of the day.
Oh, that's it.
She's pregnant as well.
How far along?
14, 15 weeks. That's why her friend said it was low blood sugar.
Let's see. I've got her friend leaving out here at 2 in the morning. My camera. Did you go check if anything was missing around your house?
It wasn't nothing. It was like all the old flames. And then her phone was still there.
She dropped her off at 1 in the morning, right?
She's my doorbell said 1:48. She came in.
This is her February at 1:48.
So as soon as it takes up motion and like back. Okay. I thought she.
That was the start of the video.
Yep.
1:48.
I did pick her up going into the house though.
It didn't. And I usually pick him up when he comes walking through here.
Mhm.
I pick him up. So it doesn't show her walking into the house. Or she would have walked by where he saw him. That's okay. The other dogs. They see all these people coming in, they're like, let's go.
Yeah.
And you know it's still live because it's 5 minutes.
How long does it typically record for?
30 seconds, I believe, at a time. But this is at 148, and then the next one I have is 105, whatever. So nothing, no cars came through, because I guarantee with the headlights, it picked up the headlights automatically.
And my Vivint said that at 5:27, my garage door was left open. But that could have been the sensor as well. It says it was shut during the day, but I think when Nikki's son, he may try to move the door around, maybe when they were trying to get in the door, in the garage door, and if I broke the laser there, that's because my alarm started going off.
Well, I know he said the front door he tried going in, but he had the lock up.
That's for
So
the
that
kids,
set it
they don't
off,
get out.
right?
And our remote on the outside doesn't work anymore. It got wet. It's a whole new breaker on the back.
So yeah, that was it.
All right. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Hopefully something comes up here.
No, but you just want to go talk to him. I'm going to get his info real quick. No.
Back and forth, and it's good. Never brings some stuff in and out of the garage.
Right.
And it doesn't look like he came from that here. It looks like he came from down the street. And then the other thing that doesn't make sense is why we pulled past this part. You can see him click.
The next day, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the FBI joined in on the investigation. Cadaver dogs were also brought to search the Watts house. However, they didn't find anything. Additionally, forensic technicians searched the house for any traces of struggle or cover-up, but were also unable to find anything. During that day, the media was alerted, and soon a huge caravan of news vehicles and reporters amassed outside the Watts home. The case gained international attention. Chris gave an interview with some local stations, pleading for their return, but some viewers noted that he seemed to be very emotionless.
I don't know where my kids are. I don't know where Shanann is. It's not something I could ever fathom would happen in my lifetime, and I have no inclination of where she is. We've reached out to friends, family. Both of our families are back in North Carolina, so they're beside themselves. Like, we all have friends in North Carolina. We have friends here. We have friends everywhere, and not knowing like where she is or where the kids are, I don't know what to do right now. I just feel so alone in this house right now, and I don't know where to go from here right now.
And you said you had to stay here by yourself last night. When I opened the door, it's like you're almost like.
I mean, my heart's racing a mile a minute. I mean, everything that's happening the last few days is just it's earth shattering right now. It's like my world's been turned upside down. Like, I have friends that have offered to I didn't feel like I should have left last night. Like, just in case, like, maybe she came back, maybe the kids came back, maybe something happened, maybe there's a knock on the door. I wanted to be here. I didn't think last night was a good time to stay with anybody else. Or, I mean, I want friends to be here with me, because that just makes me feel better.
And how do you think the police have responded so far?
It's been amazing. They've been in constant contact. Frederick Police Department, detectives, officers, sergeants. They have the dogs coming through to get scents. I mean, they've been on top of everything. Missing persons reports. Everything's been. They've been.
Do you have any idea where she could be?
She said she was going to a friend's house with the kids, and that's the last thing I heard. And that was it. It was very vague, and it was very. I don't have no inclination of where she is. Every friend that I've called that has a car seat that could have come and got her.
And you saw her yesterday morning.
Yeah, I saw her yesterday morning. She got back from the airport, and I mean, she has to be somewhere. In my heart, I believe that she is somewhere. And I hope that she is safe.
A search dog go in your house right now to get a scent. a line of police cars.
I'm so happy that they're here right now doing everything that they can. It scares the living crap out of me right now just knowing that it's come to this and that she didn't come home last night with the kids. Like, Shanann, Belle, and Celeste, if you're out there, please, just come home.
And you, yesterday, when her friends were calling frantic, something in you said, well, she'll just be home.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like her not to answer a phone call or a text. And when her friend Nicole showed up at the door, I was just like, all right, something's up. And I came home, and it was like I walked into a ghost town. Like, everything, she wasn't here, kids weren't here. It was just they were here, and then they were gone.
Yeah. And did you see the kids in the morning, too?
Just in the monitor.
Oh, yeah. And you leave really early.
Mm-hmm.
Once it had been apparent that Shanann and the kids were unlikely to be the victims of an outsider crime, such as a kidnapping, police began to turn their investigation inside and focus on Chris Watts. Within 2 days of Shanann Watts going missing alongside her 2 children, police turned their focus on her husband Chris Watts. Although Chris had previously stated he had last seen Shanann and the kids when he was leaving for work on the morning of August 13th, 2018, police were not entirely sure how true this was. The lack of evidence of any crime occurring and Chris's nonchalant behaviour caused the FBI to bring him in for preliminary questioning on the night of August 14th. During the interrogation, Chris stuck to his story and mentioned that he had thought one of Shanann's many friends may have picked her up without telling anyone. Investigators found nothing to corroborate this and pressured Chris into describing exactly what he and Shanann had talked about the last time he saw her. Chris admitted that their last conversation was a bit heated as they were arguing about marital issues. Although they seemed like a perfectly stable and happy family on the surface, police began to uncover cracks in the couple's marriage. During this interrogation, the FBI asked to search Chris's phone, and he obliged. The agent interviewing Chris had asked him beforehand if he was cheating on his wife, and he denied it. The FBI released Chris for the night and requested that he come back to the station the next day, on August the 15th, to continue the interview and to take a polygraph. Meanwhile, upon doing a digital recovery of the phone, technicians found that Chris was in fact cheating on Shanann with a co-worker named Nicole Kessinger. Chris first met Kessinger at work after taking a malfunctioning gas meter to her to have it fixed. Evidence from Chris's phone showed that Chris entered Kessinger's contact information into his phone on June the 14th, about a month before the disappearances. Deleted text messages showed a blossoming relationship between the two. On July the 4th, while Shanann and the kids were vacationing in North Carolina, Kessinger came over to the Watts house to hang out. July the 7th was when the first phone call between Chris and Kessinger were logged. Investigators also found texts on Chris's phone that showed signs of attention between him and Shanann regarding their relationship. On July the 10th, Shanann asked Chris, "You okay? It's like you don't want to talk. I keep trying to talk and I had to dig it out of you." Later that week, Chris and Kessinger went on their first date to a local car museum. Shanann attempted to call Chris 4 times during this and Chris ignored every call. Around July the 18th, Chris installed a secret calculator app on his phone. On this app, he stores explicit photos that Kessinger had been sending him. GPS and text messages from Chris's phone showed that at the end of the month, on July the 28th, the two visited the Great Sand Dunes National Park and spent the night together. The next 2 weeks of records from Chris's phone showed him and Shanann's text exchanges becoming increasingly tumultuous, including arguments about Chris's parents, who didn't get along with Shanann. Investigators also confronted Kessinger and seized her phone in order to determine if she knew or had anything to do with the disappearances. They only found that she was infatuated with Chris and had even been searching for wedding dresses online on August the 4th. The two had also exchanged romantic cards with each other. Moreover, as they continued to comb over Shanann's phone, they also found that on August the 7th, she had confided in a friend about Chris's recent behaviour and distance. On August the 12th, the day before the disappearances, Shanann, who was on a business trip, sent a friend a draft of a speech she planned to give to Chris when she returned to Colorado the next day. On August the 13th, Shanann, along with Bella and Cece, would disappear. On the 15th, the day after seizing Chris's phone and discovering a timeline of his infidelity, the FBI summoned Chris for another interview. During this interrogation, Chris took a polygraph test. He failed it. The FBI continued to interview him for the next few hours and demanded to know the truth, as they were now certain Chris was lying.
That you kind of talked about, separating or whatever when she got into bed or after you woke up. You said that you kind of talked about, separating or whatever when she got into bed or after you woke up.
Yeah.
When did that start?
So that happened in the 5 weeks that we were, like, when she was in North Carolina and I was back here.
And when did she leave for North Carolina? What was that date?
June 26th.
So the end of June?
Yeah.
Okay. And she leaves in June, and that's when. What?
Yeah, like being, like when we were talking and everything and texting and calling each other, like we could feel like there was like that disconnect there, and like over that period of time, like our conversations were shorter, text messages were a little bit less, like more like emotional type thing, more less lovey-dovey type things.
So explain, like, even before June, was there any other issues as far as your relationship goes? Or, everyone goes through ups and downs in marriage. But
like over a year ago, it's more of like, I could see that maybe it wasn't like as hot and heavy as like, as it was when we first met, that spark and everything like that. But like you say, ups and downs, marriages, like, they have their lulls and they have their highs. And like, I was hoping that we could just it would just work itself out. Like, that's
it's hard with babies and,
Yeah, when the kids are involved, a little bit harder.
Yeah.
A lot harder.
And just as far as like your time away from your spouse and, just trying to make time for them and, give them emotional attention and that kind of stuff. I know that kind of can get strained. Did you feel that once you started having kids, or, did you feel that even before?
Yeah, we didn't like go out on dates really a whole lot after we had kids, because we're just, kids monopolize a lot of your time. Like, you take up a lot. So it's like you want to focus like right on your kids all the time. And that's what we did. And we didn't really focus on ourselves much. And I think that's where, like, I'm not going to blame the kids for a disconnection or anything, but, like, yeah, we focused, like, on the kids, like, all the time. But, like, and then, like, as our relationship got longer and longer, it was more of, like I could feel that disconnect that was there. Like, we really talk, like, we didn't have those deep conversations anymore, like, anything like that. But like that's when it kind of all started, and I was hoping that maybe it just worked itself out. And being like those 5 weeks when she was in North Carolina and I was here, like I could feel it more.
Like, tell me about that. What do you mean by that?
So like you could feel like the disconnect more, like in the conversations we were having, and like they were just short, and like it felt like like when we were texting each other, and nothing was the same as far as that goes. Like calling each other, nothing was the same. And when I got there, that's when you can kind of all, like when we were talking, it was just nothing.
Yeah, tell me about that. Like, what did it seem like when you got out there finally?
Like when I got out there, it was just like, you could feel like, get to the airport, just wrap the kids, like around, they come running through the alarm and everything. They were running through a place they couldn't even run into. And gave them a big old hug and everything, and then like gave Shanann a hug and everything, and just like you can just feel it start.
Chris started to show signs of breaking down and eventually asked if he could speak to his father one-on-one. The FBI obliged, and when Chris's father arrived, Chris, on camera, confided in him that he had in fact killed Shanann. However, Chris claimed that after returning from her business trip, Shanann and him got into an argument. Shanann then went up to the kids' rooms, and when Chris got up to her, he saw that she had strangled Bella and Cece to death. He then claimed that in a fit of rage, he strangled Shanann to death with his bare hands and hid all three bodies out of fear. When investigators returned to the room, They persuaded Chris to tell them where he put the bodies. He broke down in tears and told them he buried them at his worksite, a rural petroleum field near Kearnsburg, Colorado. Due to his admission of killing Shanann and concealing all 3 bodies, the FBI had enough evidence to officially arrest Chris Watts that same evening.
Stand up for me. I'm going to have you face that wall. Good. Just face it. Lift up your hands. Okay, come face this wall. Okay, go and face me. Okay, you don't have anything on here, right? Okay, nothing in your pockets? Okay, go and face that other wall behind you. I'm just going to search you real quick. Spread your legs. Further. Okay, turn around, face me. No earrings, necklaces, anything like that? Okay. Let's walk out this way. Straight. Go out that door to your left. Seat.
The FBI didn't buy Chris's version of events, but for now, they had their man and solved the disappearance. Now, all they had to do was to find out what really happened to that warm summer night. On August the 15th, 2018, Chris Watts was arrested for the murder of his wife and concealment of the bodies of her and her 2 children, and was transported to the Weld County Jail in Greensley, Colorado. The next day, the FBI met with Chris to get information from him on where the bodies were specifically located. The worksite where he claimed they were dumped is a rural and barren oil field. Investigators and Chris's co-workers had searched it earlier but found nothing out of the ordinary. Police returned to the scene with this new information and quickly found the bodies, which were already decomposing. Over the next few days, investigators would continue to press Chris as to what really happened, and eventually he broke down and confessed to murdering Shanann and both the kids. As opposed to his original story about Shanann killing the kids and him killing Shanann, as a result of this new confession, Chris was originally arraigned on August the 21st, 2018 for all 3 deaths. He was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder, including an additional 1 count per child cited as death of a child who had not yet attained 12 years of age and the defendant was in a position of trust. Additionally, he was charged with unlawful termination of a pregnancy and 3 counts of tampering with a dead body. Chris gave in-depth details of what really happened that night, and what happened was even more horrific than his original story. According to Chris, his wife returned home from her business trip and the 2 had sex before falling asleep. Chris later woke up to get ready for work, and when Shanann woke up, they got into an argument. She told him she knew there was someone else and started crying. Chris denied the affair, but then told her he didn't think that their marriage would work, and he no longer loved her. Shanann said she would take the kids. Chris then straddled her in bed and strangled her with his bare hands. She never screamed or fought back, according to Chris. She appeared to be silently praying as he killed her. The commotion woke up Bella, who walked into the master bedroom and saw Chris on top of Shanann. She asked, "What's wrong with Mummy?" Chris replied that she wasn't feeling good and wrapped Shanann's body in a bedsheet. As Chris dragged Shanann's body down the stairs, Bella started crying and again asked Chris what happened to her mum. Chris put Shanann's body on the rear floorboard of his truck and also placed trash bags over her head and feet. He also placed a gas can in the vehicle. He then backed up the truck into the driveway and returned to the house. The commotion had also woken up Cece. Chris put her and Bella in the car, each carrying a blanket, and Cece cuddling a stuffed dog. Chris recalled that the 45-minute drive to the worksite was uneventful, although Bella complained it smelled bad, since Shanann's bowels had evacuated after being strangled. At the worksite, Chris stated he dragged Shanann's body from the back seat of the truck and buried her, which alarmed the kids. He then returned to the truck. Chris grabbed the Blue Yankees blanket Cece was holding and wrapped her head up with it before suffocating her to death as Bella sat beside them. Bella sat in silence as 3-year-old Cece's life was extinguished. He then carried her body to one of the oil tanks and dropped it inside before returning to the truck. Bella asked her father, who she once referred to as her hero, "Is the same thing going to happen to me as Cece?"
My daddy is a hero. He helps me grow up strong. He helps me not good too. He reads me books. He ties my shoes. You're a hero. Blue and blue. My daddy, I love you. Oh.
He then put the blanket over her head. "Daddy, no," she cried. She fought for her life as Chris killed her. He told police he could hear her grunt as she tried to breathe, and her head twisted back and forth under the blanket. Autopsy results show she bit her tongue severely several times as she struggled. Chris then took and stuffed her body into the second oil tank before starting his workday as usual. None of his co-workers, who arrived at the site later that day, noticed anything unusual about Chris's behaviour. On November the 19th, 2018, Chris pleaded guilty to all the charges against him and was spared the death penalty in exchange for life in prison without parole.
Would you like to make a statement?
No, sir.
Thank you. So the court has considered the arguments made by the attorneys. The court has considered the statements made by the victims in this case. The court's going to find that the plea agreement is fair and reasonable under the circumstances. I want to acknowledge the Rusick family, as well as the Watts family, that showing mercy on Mr. Watts is understood. And I respect that decision to request that the district attorney not seek the death penalty in this case. And so the court is going to accept this plea bargain under the circumstances. Words that come to mind when I hear the evidence in this case are a senseless crime and the viciousness of the crime. And equally aggravating in this court's determination is the despicable act of disposing of the bodies in the manner in which they were done in this case. I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen. And nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate, and anything less than the maximum sentence would depreciate the seriousness of this offense. So the court is going to sentence Mr. Watts as follows. With regard to count number 1, murder in the first degree as it relates to Shanann Watts, the court is going to sentence you, sir, to a life sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections, followed, with no possibility of parole. And that is going to run consecutively to all but counts 3 and 4. With regard to count 2, as it relates to murder in the first degree with Bella, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to count number 3, the court is going to sentence you as it relates to Celeste to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder. Recognizing the unlawful termination of pregnancy for the unborn child that has been named Nico, the court absolutely believes that the maximum sentence of 48 years would be appropriate to run consecutive to the other charges, with an additional mandatory parole period of 3 years as set forth by statute. With regard to count number 7, as it relates to tampering with a deceased body, as well as counts 8 and 9, each a Class 3 felony, the court is going to impose a maximum sentence of 12 years each for those counts to run consecutively to the other counts. The court is going to order that the statutory fees be paid and court costs. The court's going to grant the prosecution 91 days to file a notice of restitution, and that will be the sentence of the court. We will shortly be in recess. I would respectfully ask the parties that you remain in your seat. There is a plan by the deputies.
In addition to his infidelity, Chris also claimed the family was stressed due to having several $1,000s worth of credit card debt and struggling to pay their mortgage. He also stated that he had resented Shanann for a while because he believed she drove a wedge between him and his family. Shanann did not get along with his family for various reasons. In December, Chris was transferred to Dodge Correctional Facility in Wisconsin due to threats he received from other inmates in Colorado. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars.